Suivez-moi.
Welcome to Gallifrey Stands. My name's Dr. Squee, and with me, as always, is Waloo Woo. This week, we're talking Dot and Bubble, a fantastic latest episode with Shooty Gatwa and RTD. We're going to get into that in a minute. This week, though, I'm welcoming a couple of friends who from the Retrek podcast with me. And we will be back on Wednesday, before I forget, talking about the finale of Discovery. So please do join us for that. Always a good time to speak to these gents, but especially for that. But before we get into that, we're going to speak some Doctor Who with them. So, and I should warn you, if you hear a bleeping during the show, don't worry. We're three middle-aged men, so it's just our Dr. P's going off. Please welcome to the Gallifrey Stands podcast, Admiral Elliot and Captain Jim. How are we doing, guys?
Very good. Just have a fun
weekend. I was just going to say, thank God we don't have Dr. P's. We just we'd never just get shot of the bloody thing going on. That's why it's only young people in this particular dystopian future.
Must be, yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting dystopian future, a bit of a different spin on everything. I enjoyed this one, not to jump the gun, but yeah, I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. It was very different to things that we normally get. It's nice to have something different and not go over the same. It's very easy with a show as old as Doctor Who to go over the same stories, even though you don't intend to.
I must admit, it is so down RTD street to have an episode where you're dealing with what if kind of social media took you over and stuff, and it's something which has been done in so many shows at this stage. I was a little bit nervous going in. Yeah, I'll definitely back Mirror vibes, but I was so worried that it would tread over stuff that RTD had done before, but you really found something different to do with this one.
Yeah.
To your point. So quickly, we're going to look at the ratings accumulated for the series so far. So we've got the overnights in the first column and the +7s and the total ratings. So we've got for so last week would have been 2.62 on the overnight accumulator. It's actually given us a total of 4.06. So I assume they've worked it out, but they haven't remembered to include the +7 ratings. But essentially what we're seeing is just the ratings are staying very nice and steady. And I'm not surprised if last week's episode went down particularly well, but it was dipped just below on the kind of overnight ratings. But I think that's one which was talked about quite a lot, 73 yards. Was 73 yards last week, or was it?
That was
73 yards.
Yeah, 73 yards. Yeah. So it's 2.12, but I reckon that was in the conversation a lot this last week.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, considering they're always talking about the kind of drop-offs every week, it's kind of it went down to 2.04, up to 2.62, and then down to 2.12. So it's kind of very much in the same range. I think it's a very healthy kind of keep up with the ratings. And before we get into the episode proper, just because I've been doing it every week, we have to do the fashion watch for Shooty. So this week he goes back to his original outfit. And actually, there's something they revealed on Doctor Who Unleashed is that he is wearing his initial outfit. But this was actually the first scene that they shot with him, was the last scene from this episode.
All right.
Which, given Jesus, like we won't go into the twist right now, but given the kind of impact of that moment that he had to do, that was the first thing he shot, which I think is quite incredible.
That is quite an impressive first scene to shoot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't realize he was wearing his outfit when I saw the orange jumper, but then you see it in context. But that actually really worked well for this episode with the kind of stark colors. I thought interesting to note as well. It wasn't on Unleashed, but I heard apparently the initial idea for this one did come from a Stephen Moffat idea, which he originally wanted to put Eleven and Amy Pond in, which would have made the ending very different. It's like, come with us. Yeah, sure. As long as you're not black. Oh, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, I think that came along later on, but it just made me laugh. It's like you couldn't do the big reveal if you'd had any other doctor, well, any of the incumbent doctors, I should say, apart from Joe Martin. This really did feel like a kind of quite a bold move, but let's start at the beginning. So we're in this world where, in social media terms, we use a dot to interface, and then the bubble goes around my head, or goes around our head. Partly, I think, obviously, so that where Shooty was finishing off sex education, his shooting schedule was quite tight. But I thought this was a really inventive way of using him, so it felt like he was in the episode a lot, but he could film all his scenes in a bubble quite literally.
Yeah, I think it's one of them where it's fallen a little bit weirdly because it's come straight after the last episode, which was very Doctor Light, and then this one's sort of both Doctor and Companion Light. Though, as you say, the way they sprinkle them in, it doesn't necessarily feel like we're not getting a huge amount of them, but I think I noticed it because where it was placed with last week's as well.
Yeah.
And I kind of want hanging out with the Doctor episode next week, so we can really get to spend some more time with him.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the trailer, it looks like a bit more Doctor heavy next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how much screen time the pair of them actually got in this episode. Because, like you say, how it's done, they feel like they're in it a lot. But I bet there's actually something stupid like just 5 minutes of them throughout the whole episode.
Yeah, I mean, I will give them. I think the way they've done this series, given that they had that kind of limitation, they have been very kind of clever, and it was lovely, given that we've had two kind of Doctor lighter episodes. The one before that was just the Doctor on a landmine. You didn't escape the Doctor that
yeah, the swings and roundabouts, I suppose. Yeah, I think this sort of ties into not a concern, but I think with the truncated span of the series that we're only getting 8 episodes, like when they do a Doctor Light or a Companion Light episode and there were 13 in the run, it didn't feel as like we were missing out of as much time with the characters that we want to see lots of. Whereas for a first season with a new Doctor and a new companion, to have 2 episodes back to back where I know it was a big Millie Gibson showcase last week, but you know what I mean? We've had 2 episodes that are reducing the screen time of one or both of them out of 8 episodes. I just really like this combo of them two, and I don't feel like I've got to know them too well yet, and I would like to, and I hope we get that before the end of the season.
Like, is it right that Millie has been written out that it's a new companion for season 2?
Well, not quite that she's written out. So there's I forget her name, but she was in Boom actually. The one who's in that. So we're getting her additionally, and Millie's I think in at least half the episodes. It's more kind of we're gaining a companion than losing her.
Yeah, because what I was going to say with it, because I've heard then rumours that she might believe that she was being replaced, and it's sort of like, if we've only got 3 more episodes, there's meant to be a big story arc around Millie, and we've had little hints and stuff. It's like, well, that's not a lot to wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I feel what you guys are saying, but at the same time, I will give them a lot of credit. They are just so charismatic. I feel like I don't know if I'd feel like I got to know them as well as I had done if it wasn't for their striking performances. I
No,
mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Millie
And
That's
Gibson
it. I think they
as
work really
Astounding.
well together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I mean, I knew of Shooty from Sex Education, so I kind of like was very excited for his performance already. I already knew that I had a really good feeling that he was going to knock out of the park. But Millie, I had nothing to really go on. Like I was completely open. But she is an astounding actor for like was she 18?
She's
19?
18,
She's
19, something like
she's
that. I
very
think.
young. She's come from Coronation Street, hasn't she?
And apparently she didn't do that long on that. I mean, well, in her own words, she was
wouldn't-
saying she had a spit and sawdust kind of role or whatever they call it, spit and handshake.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't watch Coronation Street.
No.
It's something that happens to other people.
I mean, in all fairness, though, the amount of these companions who either come from soaps or go on to do soap later, I think it's kind of it obviously is a good breeding ground, and I think that kind of ethic they've got to do of learning so many lines in such a short period of time sets them up for other shows as well. Yeah, and this one, it's like I didn't think about it until I started watching the extras, but the way they had to film it with the kind of like that the actor was playing Libby. Is it Libby?
Lindy.
Lindy Pebble something.
Yeah, I should have made a note of her name, but I mean, Jesus, that is again another particularly young actor knocking out of the park. Kind of like she had to react to so much which wasn't there. And if you like, if you get the chance, do watch The Unleashed, because it is just incredible how much they put in later. The only thing they did is for a few of the shots, they put a sort of like dome around their head which had the squares on it. And then they put the screens on there. But for most of it, they just go and it's like, right, you're going to be talked to from over here. You're looking over here. You've got to look at little view screens here, there, and everywhere. Just damn impressive, I thought.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And it was a cool effect as well that they did create. But yeah, to be an actor and not have that and have to work around it and it requires a lot of acting just from your face, which I know, if you're an actor, you can be expected to act well with your face, but there's a difference between
your body movements tell things as well.
Yeah, your face being a part of the performance and being for large parts of this episode all of the performance. There's a lot of more experienced older actors who would struggle with that, and to have the guest character, but also, let's not forget the Doctor and the Companion are very young actors as well, and yeah, really, really impressive stuff all around. And to have it as well, an episode that is that focused visually. I know there were bits that were outside of it, and more so as the episode went on. But certainly probably the first half of the episode is primarily we're just either looking at her face or looking at what she's seen in this bubble. And for it not to feel slow, like I actually felt this felt like one of the fastest paced episodes of the season so far. And that's not to say the others have felt slow particularly. I don't think there's been any issues with that, but this one just felt like it was over in a flash,
Yeah, I noticed a few things as well, because you were saying about like not being able to, just only being able to act with your face, not the rest of your body. But even then, when I was watching a second time, I noticed it's like her head doesn't really move sides. It's like looking forward, and then just all's on your eyes. So even your face can't move from side to side, which is usually such an expressive thing.
Yeah, it's just facial expressions. She's not going like that to speak to someone. The effect is that it moves in front of you, which I think you can see. I was off to say you can see technology moving in that direction. People walk along with the phones, and you literally do. People walk like that with the phone in your hand. So it's not a million miles away for some device to hover in front of you, just beaming a screen in front of you.
No,
telling you how many paces to walk. I mean, because again, it was another one of these things whereby I think it really shows how RTD's grown as a writer, a producer, everything. And I feel like it's almost like I feel like he learned a bit from Moffat's time in the role as well, because like the stories, they've got that RTD kind of like RTD is really great and making everything so it's like relatable to everyone. But sometimes I felt with his original run, it made it tend a little more towards the soap opera, whereas like I feel like the storylines are meatier, and it's like he's curbed it a bit. So even though you've got something which is silly, like they need arrows on the screen, otherwise they can't walk, which is a bit of a silly idea. I feel like in previous RTD ones, it's had that every other scene, and you'd also have the weakest link happening, and you'd have this, that, and the other, which is very specific this time, which ages it. Whereas that's been stripped back, and it just feels a bit more grown up somehow. I don't know.
Well, like what you're saying there with like the weakest link episode that he did that time, and it had a few other, I can't remember which shows the reference.
Big Brother were in there and all sorts.
Yeah. But if you showed someone who was like maybe a 20-year-old who's just getting into Doctor Who and went, oh, well, watch these, they probably wouldn't have a clue about some of them shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
the irony is that in 20 years, someone will watch this and go, oh, her dot on bubbles really old-fashioned compared to what we've got now.
Yeah, but I feel like if it's technology, you can almost extrapolate that it's like we do with Star Trek. The tech in the original series is obviously like the way it's huge and it's shaped and everything, but we could decide that's a stylistic design. Like it still does this incredible stuff. It just looks a bit jinxy to us, but that could be a throwback retro kind of look they're going for. You know, there's ways of explaining around that. If it's a TV show that was on in the 90s, it's not quite the same, you know. Like,
to be fair, like this with the arrows, it's not a million miles away from where we pull up our sat nav. How do we get to the pub? And you can you see people and they can almost see it, and they've still got the sat nav out, telling them they're 50 yards away, you're 20 feet away, and they're still looking at the phone as they walk along to it. And this still happens now.
And that's obviously. I mean, that I did want to talk about that a little bit, because that's obviously where they're going with this. Is that you know people do over rely on sat navs. You know, me and Elliot went to the Games Expo at the weekend, and I was driving, and Birmingham to Leeds, NEC, Leeds to the NEC is not a difficult drive. You basically get on the motorway and then you come off of it again. So it wasn't that challenging. But I'll hold my hands up and admit, without a sat-nav, I am rubbish. But I think that's the way technology's evolved. Like, by the time I was driving, sat-navs were pretty commonplace. So I've not had to learn that, and that's a choice. And I think what he's doing is he's extrapolating that, and he's saying, right, will this get to the stage where you can't even walk around without being told how to do it? And that, to me, was where the episode did get a little bit too on the nose and silly in terms of trying to make the point.
Remind me of Wall-E when they can only move in those seats.
Yeah, that's one thing. But I think where it gets silly is if you take the sat-nav metaphor, is like, if I was driving and I was trying to get somewhere I didn't know and my sat-nav broke down, yes, I wouldn't know exactly where to go, but I wouldn't forget how to drive. Whereas this is kind of saying, yeah, if they've not got these arrows, they'll literally walk into things that they can see in front of them. So it's almost saying, you know, it removes your natural instincts, which maybe that is what he's going for. But the way it came across, I thought was just a bit daft, where she's walking into lampposts.
I think if you look at it, like, this is possibly, they've been using these dots for generations. So literally from birth, they've had a bubble around them, and they've been taught literally from birth. They've been told when to move forward, and the brain has stopped making them connections itself.
Yeah. And but that, I think, requires a bit more mental gymnastics on our part.
It does require more. It does require more.
I feel like this is,
but like if we go back to the sat navs, I've got like 10 years on you, and I find the sat navs weird. I'm quite capable of using a map. Like, I don't drive, and one of the things I always used to do with my mates before we had sat navs, if we were going places, my job was I sat in the front with the map, and it'd be right. We're going up up this road.
Navigator.
Right, we're coming off. We're coming off a third exit or whatever, and that was how it used to work. I found that quite natural.
But this is one of the things for me. It's like I take Elliot's point actually. If you do, or if your brain stops making the connections, I suppose it might be possible. But for me, it was just one of those things whereby I don't mind RTD slipping in one or two ridiculous things which makes a point. Like there is a thing to like, you've got an hour of TV, so sometimes you have to go too far to make a point within that hour that you would spend more time kind of really establishing in a show where it's like you're going to go back to this place. However, it's when he used to, again, if you watch back some of those earlier ones, I think what it suffers from, he would put 10 of those per episode. And I think he's curbed that. And I find it so much more enjoyable. Like, it didn't seem intrusive, the fact that the arrows thing, because they were literally screaming, it's like, go back. Like, that's exactly the same as what the machine was doing. So there's no reason why that wouldn't work as well for her.
Yeah.
But we've got to, we've got to make a point in a short period of time, and we're not coming back to this planet like that we know of at this stage anyway. One thing I was going to bring up, I think there are this episode might just bring in a lot of things from other episodes as well. I think when we do, because I get a feeling some of the kind of bits of explanation we've not got in some of the episodes, I think is going to definitely come in at the end, or I'm hoping so. And one of there was a few things which I leads me to believe that maybe this episode had a lot of them in here, because you'll notice the colors were very kind of like distinctive and bright, or and there was a kind of pastel effect to them. Remind me a bit of the Devil's Cord, where they had the 60s kind of vibe. You've got the fact they couldn't see the monsters because of the things on the head, and it seemed like almost a willingness not to see them, maybe a bit like the perception filter. I thought maybe they're laying something down here that this might link back. There was even a bit where they were talking about later on about the mum having died, and it's like, oh yay, they'll have gone to the place above, and they were all happy about that, which is
she's gone to the sky.
Yeah, so I wonder if this has got actually more in this episode from previous ones than maybe is being signposted this time.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's going to be an overall thematic link between.
Could they even be the space babies, who have been transplanted here with new memories?
You also had the mummies. What's her first name? I can't remember her first name.
Susan Twist.
Yeah, Susan Twist is there again, and they both recognised her this time.
I like that. Yeah. I like that they have the characters actually acknowledging it now, because I think it's come at the right time of the season. Like, we've seen her enough times, and Rusty Davies is very good at stuff like this and predicting how the online discourse is going to go and knowing when to drop nuggets and things like that. And I think we're just over halfway through the season, and I think he's realised, right, if we've put this woman in this many episodes, by this time the internet's going to be all over it. The theories will be out there. Let's take the next step and have the characters realise it. Otherwise, the characters look silly.
So after you, Elliot.
I was going to say, the doctor's observant enough that he would be picking it up by now, even if he's only seen this woman a couple of times. I'm not sure if he's not actually seen her in every episode. Millie's seen her sometimes. Well, he's seen her sometimes.
Well, that's the thing. He picked up her as I think it was the hologram, maybe from...
she was from Boom. From Boom.
But what you'll if you watch back last week's 73 Yards... Millie recognized her when she was the hiker. She goes, when weren't you? No. And then they sort of move on. And I like that this week she goes like, oh no, I recognize her from somewhere else, like as if she was remembering 73 Yards, but not quite remembering it.
That's good.
That was a nice
I got that as well. Like hold on, there's something that's happened now. I'm not I know this has happened, but it hasn't.
Oh, we are going to jump around a bit on this one. But yeah, I did like it was very, very random. But again, it sort of seemed very RTD to have the song which Ricky September was dancing to was the Itsy Witsy Teeny Beanie Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini by Timmy Mallet. I think that was the Timmy Mallet version, wasn't it?
Well, to me, there's only one version, and it's the Timmy Mallet version.
Well,
So you know,
you're right. Now you say that. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking.
I do think it was the Timmy Mallet version.
Yeah.
I'm not, playing devil's advocate. I would guess the Timmy Mallet version is possibly the cheapest to license, so there may have been some practical considerations in there.
I also wanted to talk a bit about the kind of like ramping up the threat. So I do love it when we've already kind of seen that there's something kind of weird happening. We've seen it in the periphery, the monsters, but it's the bit where she's walking. She's been directed as like 2 steps left, then 2 steps forward, and she walks around the dead body, which gets dragged off. That was kind of a nice little moment. I loved little bits like that, and it's just like the idea that they were that desensitized. Doesn't matter what noise is happening outside your bubble. A little bit on the nose as a metaphor, but still pretty good.
Yeah, and I quite liked when she went outside and she dropped the bubble, and we'd seen an establishing shot which was like all CGI buildings and whatnot, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, just, it was quite grandiose and futuristic looking, and then by the time we get her down onto the street level and she drops all the artifice, and as she said, there's all the colours and everything when she was in the bubble. But then it's this really quite drab, ordinary-looking street. And I feel like having that contrast is quite striking in the episode, that once you do get out of your bubble, so to speak, the real world's quite mundane. And I think contrasting the futuristic visuals and the very clean, sort of the almost like Apple Store aesthetic that we got in the office bit, with what looks like just any sort of inner city area. I thought that was pretty cool and quite effective.
What did we think of the monster reveal then? So we see these kind of giant slugs. I do like the kind of idea that they're perfectly shaped as a predator to fit around a body. That was kind of nice.
Yeah.
But I must admit, when I first saw them, the first watching, I thought they were CGI. It was only after I watched Doctor Who Confidential, they built them up a bit with CGI, but they are actually practical effect. I thought they actually looked like they've been planted in. I don't know what you guys.
Yeah, I thought they were CGI. To be fair,
I thought it looked very CGI, and I was when we first saw them, I thought, this isn't very good CGI. How much Disney money has it actually got? They did start to look better a bit later, but at first it just didn't look very good. The first views of them.
Yeah,
I'd agree. I think the concept of them was quite scary, and like you said, the fact that they just sort of instantly absorbed everyone was pretty cool. But the actual look of them was not great.
Going back to one of the real Tom Baker monsters. And I can't remember the name, but they were like a slug, and it's one where the TARDIS got destroyed when he had to rebuild it.
They reminded me most of the Slitheen. But now that I'm thinking about it, actually, do you remember the finale of Extras where Andy Millman eventually agrees to go on Doctor Who?
Yes!
And he's a slug in a little slug costume, and David Tennant throws table salt at him. And now that's all I'm ever going to think of watching this episode, so there we go.
Well, I'd like to throw in then for anyone who's a real aficionado and has listened to the Big Finish audio dramas, there's one of those where they have the Slither gene, which are these big slug creatures, which made me think of that. Just for anyone who knows who they are.
So it all fits together, Slither gene, Slitheen. There we go.
There you go. Oh my God, thank God this wasn't the Slovene. I mean, like they may have looked a bit CGI, but at least, yeah.
Yeah, the since the first series of Eccleston, the CGI with Disney money or without has come a long way. So we're not going to get to that level again. And
I can agree with you guys. I'd like to see these guys again and see if we can get the look of them a little bit.
I like it's how it goes on, how this episode develops. It was almost like, why have the Dots built these genetic monsters? There's absolutely no need for them.
Well, that's a question I feel like they don't answer, because we don't know how they got to Earth either when we see them on the view screen there. Oh, sorry, not Earth.
No, the home world. Yeah, you're right. We don't.
Well,
presumably they have dots on the home world as
Yeah.
well. So presumably they've made them there. But like you said, as we find out later in the episode, the dots can basically go all Terminator and kill you that way. So why
so it's
do they
like
need
why
the slugs?
have they gone to the effort of creating a genetic thing? And how have they created this genetic thing without anyone realizing? Is there another species involved behind the scenes that we haven't found yet?
And we've also
That's
got
sort of
the
like
alphabetical order
created
thing.
the dots.
We've also got
to
the
be
alphabetical order
fair,
thing, which at the moment isn't explained.
The dots could make the people build them, and they wouldn't know that's what they were doing. So that bit, I can see how they could do it. Basically, they've got a slave labor force who have no idea what the jobs are or what they're supposed to do. So they could just go do this, put that chemical test tube in there, whatever. So that I'm okay with. But yeah, I don't know why it was alphabetical order. I mean, it made for a cool, tense.
Well,
yeah, it was a good gimmick within the episode to do it.
I'd just like to bring forth my theory again, because, like, as I say, I think a lot of stuff we're picking up from previous episodes. With my kind of theory that maybe this settlement is the space babies grown up, or like maybe kind of like descendants of them, because like the fact that you've got Susan Twist as the mum, and she's been loads of other characters. I know there is a way which she could be kind of the same template scattered throughout time. But if we assume that she's not actually their parent, like that's implanted memory, maybe alphabetical order was something to do with the system aboard the Space Babies ship. And also you've got the fact that the Space Baby ship made a snot monster out of their bogies. So it's got form creating monsters as well. So this can maybe... This could be the
Do we
ship
really want the whole season to hinge around space babies?
Well, it might improve it. That was the weakest episode so far. Like it wasn't that bad, but it almost felt like old RTD, whereas I think he's matured so much and he was already good.
So you're thinking like when she sees her mum, that everyone sees that same person as the mum?
Oh, that's possible. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, that's good.
That because like we get the impression that there's no physical contact between anyone.
Yeah.
Because we have like Lindy with I can't remember Ricky September when she hugs him. I've never hugged anyone before. I've never touched. So it's like I've never
also
touched anyone
echoes
before.
Space Babies with I've never had a hug before.
Never had a hug. Yeah. Oh, I think you may well be right with it.
Even if it's not the same Space Babies, I think they might be the same technology.
And the thing is how all communication is done on these screens. Like, they don't even look at the people in the office next to them. They just come up on the screen if they have to say anything to each other. They won't look at each other. So you could quite easily have whoever is showing themselves to be mum and dad could very, very easily just be the same person.
Yeah, and that been done in something. I seem to remember it might have been Dark Mirror, because this is very Dark Mirror.
It is very Dark Mirror.
But what I will say though is I feel like Black Mirror itself has kind of gone off the boil a bit, whereas this felt like early Black Mirror where it was really interesting. So that. I'm all right with that. Like, if you're gonna borrow ideas off something and you're gonna do it as good as they used to do it, then yeah, why not?
I also thought the way they did the kids, I love the idea that it's sort of like a futuristic Love Island, but they've sent them to work for a couple hours, so it kind of takes care of the gap year idea with rich kids as well. So it kind of encapsulates a few ideas.
Yeah.
And it does seem very topical. The thing which I've said is like a lot of this stuff, I think RTD's done so much stuff which seems particularly prescient, which like he kind of predicted that what would be in the news now, but it's kind of all fitted in very nicely. And this just made me think about, I don't want to get too overly political, but the fact that we have got an election on the way, and one of the kind of big issues is about kind of like money going to the top for a lot of people. And it feels like this is kind of, you imagine the other children on the same planet being kind of very kind of undermined and very put down. And here's the rich kid goes to live on, another planet and have their kind of fun time all the time.
Like, did you notice, like, when it got to the end, there was really only 3 rich kids there in total.
Yeah.
But there was other people there who looked older. And I wonder if there's sort of like, they're the plebs, the workers, and they don't say anything, and that's why the streets are normally clean and stuff, because they're there just to, and they were doing all the loading of the boat and everything, and it's almost like it's they have got a full-on hierarchical system where I have the money, you do what I say, and we literally ignore your presence, but you're like, the streets will be clean. And that's probably why everywhere's nice and clean, because I can't imagine the rich kids are out sweeping roads and all that. They just seem to go to an office, and that's where they recharge the dock for the day.
Yeah. Jodie, what's in the house? I like the political message too. Thanks, Jodie. So yeah, I think it's also very interesting what they kind of, the way they had obviously Lindy was kind of very arrogant and very like, duh, are you stupid to everything, which is kind of about young people. But when they were asked about anything practical, they didn't have that knowledge, which I actually think works two ways. One, it does sort of satirize kind of young people and kind of the arrogance of just what I see in my world is what's important. Social media is all that matter. I don't know anything practical. Kind of takes a mixture of them. But I think it actually is a bit of an indictment on parents not really teaching their kids, not getting them out of their bubble. So I think you can really like see it two ways as well.
Yeah, I think in this one it was definitely, it wasn't just having a go at them for consuming it. It was having a go at the overall system. And there was that moment when she did start walking into things, which again I do think was overplayed and a bit silly. But that was when she sort of started saying, "Oh, I'm so stupid," and it almost felt like that was going to be a turning point for the character to realise, like, I've been going around calling everyone else stupid, but I can't even walk around the lamppost. But then, obviously, I'm sure we'll get onto it, but the character takes some more turns later, so she didn't sort of find that redemption that scene made me think might be heading her way.
Yeah, it was played that she was having a redemption arc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jodie's come up with a decent theory. I thought it was clever the way they were stuck like refugees, no legal way of moving, but given refuge if you get to the right place. That's an interesting take.
Which again ties in with Space Babies, which was a bit of a commentary on refugees as well.
Yeah.
So that's almost. Oh, in fact, I'm coming up with something now. Is being trapped the theme of this season? Like the Space Babies were trapped. The Doctor was literally trapped in Boom because he couldn't move.
Millie was trapped in 73 yards.
She was trapped in 73 yards, a certain distance from herself. And now we've got this, that they're trapped in these bubbles.
And they had to trap Maestro in the piano. Like the
piano. There we go. I was struggling for how to tie Devil's Cord into it.
There you go.
But yes, maybe there is a bit of a theme. And refugees have been a huge political issue for forever. But in the past several years, it informed a great deal about Brexit and a great deal about the discourse in the upcoming election and everything. So I can imagine that being on Russell T Davies's mind, and some of his other work like Years and Years, that's there. So it's not surprising that there's this idea of refugees cropping up, and particularly in the very late scenes in this episode, there's almost a feel of like an underground railroad as we see the way they're assembling. So yeah, that does seem to have something.
Well, that's nice. And the one thing which I thought about as well during this episode, because you had the Doctor stuck on the screen for the whole, pretty much the whole episode, I thought it was interesting because I noticed him using the sonic screwdriver, and it made me think he actually has been a lot lighter on the sonic than some of the other Doctors. Like a lot of the time they've had him, in at least 2 episodes, they had him stick it into like a mixing board in the Devil's Cord, and then on another one they had it stick him into a console, so it wasn't with him at all times. Space Babies, yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah. I think they purposely lightened up how much he used it, so now when you've got him just stuck on a video screen, he's sort of got to use it because like, what else is he going to use? But like even during Boom, you couldn't have him use it because it would have set off the mine. It's just So
it also helps though having him do that to control an electronic device also does help with them universal remotes shaped like a Sonic that they sell. So there's a practical concern with that. It's a bit like, do you remember that Captain Power TV show where you got a light gun and you could shoot at the actual show?
No.
Yes.
Anyway, don't worry, not many people remember it. It was J. Michael Straczynski, before he did Babylon 5, did this kids show that was meant to try tie in with a toy line. And one of the big things was the spaceships that you bought for the toys at certain points during the episode could interact with it. Anyway, I digress.
No, that's good.
But yeah, the theme of refugees does seem to be coming up. Can I just say about the idea of the Doctor on the screen? And I really like the moment where she says, well, you two are in the same place, and you do get the Doctor sort of nipping over Ruby's screen and showing. But then it does make you think, so what did this room look like that the Doctor and Ruby were in? Was it half one colour, half the other colour? So that the Doctor could nip back. But it just conjures up a great image. So I enjoyed that.
It's a filter on the Sonic.
Yeah.
It's just how he's done his green screen.
Yeah. It's an Instagram filter built into the Sonic screwdriver. That's what it is.
Yeah. That's fine.
Another thing which made me think about the perception filter as well is we see, I think it's Gothic Paul is the one we see getting killed. So that's when the other guys realize it's real and they can't deny it anymore, or despite all the people displaying previously. So I wonder, it just seems weird that they've seen that, but there was so many other people getting picked off in alphabetical order. The chances are this wouldn't be the first time this was seen, but I'm wondering if they're using the kind of devices as a sort of perception filter to kind of delete bits from their minds.
I imagine because it's the Dot that's responsible for it. When one of them gets attacked previously, they've just been shutting off their screen beforehand.
They would usually shut the feed down.
But they've reached the point here where the Dots have obviously gained sentience, so they'll be aware that they now know what's going on, so there's no point hiding it anymore. And
also, the Doctor is stopping them from muting each other and blocking each other and stuff like that. So maybe he's overridden whatever it was they were doing that was preventing people from seeing it. It's just made me think as well. The concept is quite evocative of. It was a fairly low budget horror movie a few years ago. I think it was called Unfriended, where the whole thing takes place on a laptop and the characters got various Zoom windows open, and you do have sequences where someone will get murdered in one of the Zoom windows and then it'll, the others will react to it. What's that? Sorry.
I was just saying it was a lockdown film, I believe. I
think it was. Yeah. And it's just made me realise, this is quite a similar idea to that. I think possibly this is done better. Certainly the end of this is better because the end of Unfriended was a bit rubbish. But yeah, so it's got elements of other things that have been out there in popular culture, but that's not to the detriment of this, because all writers do this. Like, you see an interesting concept and think, oh, what could I do with that? What spin could I put on that? And I think that's really interesting.
Just another note I wanted to throw out there was I did like Ricky when it's like, but what do you do if you take off your bubble? It's like, sit there and read sometimes, like, whoa, you're off the chain, man. Like she checks in. Such crazy. That was kind of fun.
Well, it was said that he does his 2 hours work, which is obviously he's dancing to Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. That's his job. Which, okay, if that's your job, okay. But he said that he was never wearing his bubble. He took it down as soon as he finished his job all the time. He'd educated himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was an interesting sort of contrast that the idea is he's sort of an extrapolation of, so-called influencers, but they choose to give that character more depth and more bravery and more compassion
But
than anyone else in
It
the
does-
episode, really.
it does say here that takes us back to why they hadn't seen any of the other people getting killed. That he'd been putting warnings out through the bubble.
Yeah.
It was being censored and not broadcast to anyone.
But
so
yeah,
the dots are controlling what people can see and can't see.
Yeah.
I just find that interesting that they take a character who, you know, a viewer might assume would be an incredibly vacuous character with very
that's
little
how it's built
moral
up,
core.
isn't it?
And yeah,
That's how it's
and then they
built up.
make him the interesting, you know, the one who's
the
got more
interesting
depth
hero.
to the character.
And when I did like it when you got Ruby and the Doctor, they're both fighting over him. By the way, it's like, no, hands off.
Yeah.
That's a nice little moment. But in that same bit, Ruby says to him, "Okay, Heartstopper," which I think is a nod to the fact that Yasmin Finney, who plays Donna's daughter,
Yes, was in Heartstopper.
she was in Heartstoppers, and I know RTD is kind of like putting a few nice little LGBTQ nods in here. It just seemed like that can be a coincidence.
Yeah, that was definitely a little meta sort of nod to it, wasn't it? Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else who was in this episode was in that, but yeah.
I don't either. I've yet to see it, though. It does come very highly recommended, the show. I've just
I watched
not got around to that.
It didn't like it was good enough, but it was like it was a teeny drama. It just it felt not for me in that way. But apart from that, it was very enjoyable and very well acted and everything. It just didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel like it was necessarily made for me as well. So yeah, really, we kind of get towards the end then. We find out it's murdered by Alphabet.
We find out the dots can just kill them themselves.
Yeah, which is kind of funny to your point why they don't do that previously.
Yeah, it's like, why have you gone to all the effort of genetically creating these slug creatures?
Yeah, you literally right there in front of the head. Why don't you just go like they do to...
You've gone to a lot of unnecessary effort here.
But again, does that mean it's part of something bigger? We don't know.
I wonder could it be like talking about the alphabet, because that is a stupidly arbitrary sort of thing to be imposed on it, particularly by an AI. Like, well, I suppose you could argue an AI would do it. Alphabet, I mean, the Terminator did it in alphabetical order when he was going after the Sarah Connors, I suppose.
The thing is, if you're doing it alphabetical like this and you've got the slug creatures killing them, it slows down the entire process of wiping them all out. So it takes a couple of weeks to get the impression. Whereas the all could attack at once and do it immediately.
And it's a silly idea that, I've realised that we got someone out of sequence. Right, I won't kill you now, I'll kill him, even though I was about to kill you.
Yeah.
Yes, what a bitch for that as well.
Well, yeah. But just on the practical level, that wouldn't make sense for a computer. You know, it'd be like, I won't abandon this task to do that task because this task currently is nearly done. So that seemed a little bit silly. But what I was going to say is an alphabetical thing that almost, if, you know, we go back to like a character like the Toy Maker, that if that was a rule that has been imposed on them by a higher being because it's playing with them, that would make sense. Like, I'm going to make you have to do this in that order.
Is it playing with the dots or is it playing with the fine timers?
I don't know. Either or.
Because it doesn't make a lot of sense to be playing with the fine timers because right until the very end, you don't even realise anything's going on.
True.
Until there's literally just a handful of them left.
But it would make more sense if this was an arbitrary rule imposed for someone else's amusement. Okay. That would fit. And that would also answer some of my problems that I had with 73 Yards, which, you know, it just seemed to be a very specific curse that it would do numerous things.
Yeah.
But if there is a higher power governing this season and imposing these things, that would actually tie off a lot of the loose ends that I feel have been.
I've also realised it's a nod to this may or may not be purposeful, but it could be seen as a nod to Douglas Adams, because I've just realised in one of the Hitchhiker's Guidebooks, you've got someone, Wowbagger, I think it's the Wowbagger, the infinitely overlived or something like that, and he decides to go back and insult everyone who ever existed, but he has to do it in alphabetical order. And that's,
Yeah.
didn't even think about that before. Sorry, you were going to say, Elliot?
I was off to say there's a really interesting part here. Like, the Doctor has realised that they're being killed in alphabetical order, and he's just saved Lindy Pebble. Is it Pebble Mint or something?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So he's saved up to P.E., and he just goes, he gives up when she's like a total bitch, which makes me think, what, so far, everyone whose name begins with QRSTUGWXYZ can just go fuck himself because she's a racist bitch.
Basically, I mean, we'll get into the racism in a second, but before we get to that, I did think there was just something so well plotted about the fact that we see her basically jobbing him in to save her own hide. And then it's kind of like, it raises so many questions of like, what's going to happen next scene, none of which are what is going to happen. So it's like, oh, is the Doctor can then find out and then kind of, obviously, question her a bit more? Is it going to be that she's going to then kind of like confess and then question herself and have to live with what she's done? None of which are, no, I think she's going to be a racist bitch. Like, that did not occur to me.
I thought the Doctor was off to find out what she'd done and leave her, that you don't deserve to be saved.
Well, I'm glad they didn't go that route, because that feels like what.
Because that has happened. I think that's happened before. I know it's happened. Well, it's
David Tennant. With David Tennant, they had his Doctor being a bit more vengeful, and when someone crossed him, he would leave them behind. And he was even a bit bullying, I felt, to Mickey's character, because at one stage he got him to hold a lever for 20 minutes when he only had to hold it for a minute because he was chatting up Rose. I'm sorry, I don't want my Doctor to be that petty, and I get it. You've always got to make the Doctor react kind of somewhat differently, but that went beyond. Like, what I love about Doctor Who is I turned to that when I was being bullied, and for the Doctor to in any way feel like he's being bullied just didn't sit right with me. I like, this is my version of the Doctor, is like, even if you're an abhorrent person, like, this is more like the Titanic episode with David Tennant, because like the guy from Keeping Up Appearances comes up to him and goes, well, if you could choose, what kind of monster would that make you? And I feel like this is the Doctor not being the monster of like, look, you just think whatever you want of me, I'm going to save you. Like, this is what I do. I'm the Doctor, I save people.
Yeah, I really liked that. And I liked seeing an angry side of the Doctor come out, but he's angry because they won't let him save them, and to have him being upset and angry about that. I thought it does contrast with where they took Tennant towards the end of his run. Where it was sort of playing into the arrogance side of it.
But that also made sense at the period of the Doctor, that we had Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, etc. They had a run of things that had happened and why the Doctor was like he was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And,
I appreciate that.
And that ties in with where they're going with this version, is that this is a Doctor who's unburdened with all of that stuff. But now things are going to start to get to him, and it's almost like he's discovering them all anew. This is the carefree Doctor, but he's been given something to care about here, and it's an anger at the world, and it's an anger at people at why can't you just let me save you? I just thought, I really like that as something to get to him.
And it really reminded me of his, chronologically, his first episode. As I say, this is astounding. This was his first scene he filmed, but it really reminded me when, like, Ruby asks about, no, it's the second episode, I believe it was, but at the beginning where she asked about the Time Lords, and he goes, gone! They're gone. He kind of does it sort of laughingly, and then goes straight into like this really, they're gone. They're all gone. Like, he goes into the emotion, and it's the same kind of thing with this. You almost like, he starts laughing at the kind of absurdity of it, and then just the emotions hit him. And I think there is something about, he's sort of like, they said when he split off from David Tennant that it's like therapy, like by stealth or whatever they call it. And this does feel like a doctor who's gone through therapy and he is able to cry now. He's able to process his emotions as they happen. And that's why they're so raw and so close to the surface. But like, unlike one of our perennial complaints with Discovery when we talk about Star Trek is the fact that it lets emotion overtake any kind of plotting or logic or reason to the episode. Whereas this does a wonderful job of having that raw emotion, but the Doctor is still going to do what he has to do to try and save people and everything else. And it's just, I think he's just such an extraordinary Doctor for that.
Like Ruby's really annoyed at them for being racist. She's fuming about that. But the Doctor isn't even reacting to the racism part. He's reacting to them not letting them save him. Or him save them. Is what's actually bothered him. It's not racism just doesn't even bother, isn't part of this to him. It is to all us see it, and we see it through Ruby's eyes, but he's not reacting to that.
And it's something the Doctor hasn't had to face before. He hasn't had to because of the color of his skin, not be able to save people. And that's going to happen now. And it's wonderful. It's like he hasn't changed. They have. Like, that's the whole point. It's like people's reactions, not him. And that's why it's kind of so interesting that this was originally plotted around a white Doctor. Like this, obviously you don't get this huge twist at the end, which just really ties the whole episode together. And now when I watched it the second time, I noticed all these little things, like when she first flicks the Doctor off the screen, it's almost like, just flicks him off. But when Millie comes on the screen, then she talks to him. She's kind of blunt and rude to her, but she doesn't flick her off the screen straight away. She gets a second to talk around, which the Doctor didn't. And there's a few other moments where if you watch it again, there are very subtle clues. It's so well done.
Yeah, like, could you imagine dropping him into that the one in America in the 50s with on the bus with the
Rosa Parks one.
Rosa Parks story. Yeah. If he had to be in that in there, it's like, how would them stories work? And you can see a lot of that if you went to America, because that there could be a lot of issues.
Well, and it's what I've always said. It's like I don't think for a moment we're ever going to ignore the Doctor's race and how that kind of does impact him going through time. However, I think it's one of the things, if for the plot you want to have an episode where you just follow something historical, you can choose to highlight race less and you can still go for those episodes.
Yeah, you can.
If you want to have an episode where you deal with race, you can do that too. Like, I think it's because some people go like, oh, what? So every time the Doctor goes to the past now, he's just going to be questioning about his race. Like, well, no, you can have some episodes where you don't do that. And you have episodes where you do that. You don't ignore it, but you also don't let it kind of like...
maybe that's why they did... Maybe that's why they did that Isaac Newton one in the David Tennant special, where everyone was up in arms. We've got a black Isaac Newton, you can't do that. And maybe that was established so that, yes, we can have a black man in the past and we're not going to make it a racist issue. We can do this if we want.
Yeah, I think it's a great situation where, as I say, if you in every episode ignored it, that's bad storytelling. But if in some episodes that's not the story you're telling, that's good too. Like, we can have everything. That's what I love about this. I really feel like we've got so many different modes of storytelling already, and we're just over halfway through it.
This was a massive, like, the end of this was just a massive curveball.
But I would be so disappointed if I watched the episode back and there were no kind of clues in there for you know, after you knew. But it is all there. It's just, it's so well done.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's actually that big a clues, but I think there's definitely clues that they obviously stuck up white privileged idiots.
But it's like, just as I say, now watching it back, like it's nothing that signposts you the first viewing. Although there was a couple of scenes and I'm going, this seems very white. This like I didn't notice it was all white. And I thought maybe they were going to have a little nod to that. I did not see where it was going at all. I'm not going to pretend I did. But I did go, this is very white. They're going to pay mention to this at some point, but I didn't think it was going the way it was. But yeah, just a wonderful episode. Really well done. I think we really have got something different from every episode of this series, and I just can't wait. I'm a little bit nervous because next week we've got bird people, and RTD loves to have sentient trees and stuff, but He's done so well in the series. I've got faith. I've got faith.
Is it bird people next week?
They seem to be
thought it
turning
was
into birds when they were done.
I only very briefly saw the teaser, so no, I wasn't questioning that it was. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Well, let's hope it goes the way of that Lower Decks episode with the bird people. That'll be interesting for primetime Saturday night viewing kids shows. So,
You're just saying that's
yeah.
wind me up now, aren't you?
A Birdman from Rick and Morty.
No, thank you very much for joining me, guys. As I say, guys, please, everyone, join us. We're going to be there on Wednesday at 6 o'clock, talking about Discovery's finale. I can't remember the name of the episode. What was it called?
Life Itself.
Life Itself. Which, yeah, I had some feelings on, but we won't get into that right now. But for this week, I've been Dr. Squee. With me, as always, has been Walloo Woo, and joining me has been
Captain Jim
and Admiral Elliot.
And until next week, please, everyone, live like you've got two hearts and be kind.